If you make over $400,000 per year and you want to get into real estate for the tax savings and the cash flow, there's no better time to use 100% bonus depreciation to offset as much of your income as possible with one Airbnb short-term rental. So you and I both know the best part about buying Airbnbs is for the tax benefits and then the cash flow. So if you can buy that deal for low money down and get into the highest purchase price home that you can reasonably afford the monthly payments on, the next steps are to then figure out what revenue driving amenities do you need to add in and how do you hire a co-host to be a property manager who's going to help you maximize the cash flow as much as possible. So yesterday I recorded a 60-minute video call with around 15 people who are just getting started with our team, finding their very first or next short-term rental so that they can max out the tax benefits and the cash flow. In this video, we talk about some of our top sub-markets, why short-term rentals and why now, the pros and cons of doing everything in 2025, revenue driving amenities, finding the best co-hosts, and then how to do all this for as low money down as possible. So check out this next video. If you're not already working with the team, go ahead and click the link somewhere around this video. Weird circle. Go ahead and click the link somewhere around this video and we'll schedule a time to speak for 45 to 60 minutes. We help hundreds of clients every single year buy their first or next short-term rental in under typically 45 to 60 days. On average, most of the clients do a total entry into the deal anywhere from $90,000 to $180,000. So there is a minimum cash on hand requirement. So if that's you and you're ready to ditch the massive tax bills, stop funding inefficient governments, and get into real estate for the tax benefits and the cash flow, click the link somewhere around this video. And for now, check out this video. These cool guys. Well, let's dive in. Super excited to dive in. So topics were best markets for 2025. We'll certainly start there. Revenue driving amenities. And then the other one was how revenue driving amenities increase revenue. We'll talk about regulatory and compliance, and then why STRs and why now, the pros and cons of 2025. Let's just start with the why STRs and why now. And then let's get into the specific nuance of why in 2025. So for, I would say for most people, you guys are probably looking like this, right? You guys make a lot of money at the beginning of the year. So you have your, 400K per year households. Some of you guys are like 650K per year. Some of you guys are 750 plus. And then some of you on one end of the spectrum are closer to $1 million plus every single year. Well, what happens is after you guys have your tax bill and you look at what you're paying, and you look at what you're left over with, this is where probably a lot of you guys end up somewhere around this spectrum, which is, 200, 300K plus tax bills, depending upon how you get in here. What most people are trying to do is instead, they're trying to buy a home and instead have income that looks closer to something like this. So you guys make 400K per year and you end up keeping most, if not all of it, every single year. Same feeling for the households making closer to 650. So they're either keeping all of it or very, very close. Same thing for the households who are here. Maybe they're keeping closer to this, depending upon what amount they can offset. And then maybe for the $1 million household incomes, they're keeping closer to like 800K or whatever the amounts amount out to, based on whether you guys are W-2, 1099, running your own business, whatever kind of business owner or W-2 wage earner that you guys are. So the first thing that I think is really key for this year is, I think, number one, the name of the game is doing reverse offset methods. And this is specifically low money down deals. So what does this really mean? Low money down. And then it's specifically lower closing costs. So the reason why we're big fans of these is specifically because what most people would be doing otherwise is they would be putting down a pretty significant down payment using a lender and a super, super high loan origination fee that, if not entirely, kills off whatever cash flow that you're getting in the first 1, 2, or 3 years. If you actually look at a settlement statement and look at how much you guys are paying to lenders, if you guys look at how much you're funding other inefficient parties, some people pay buyer's agent commission fees. It's not always something that is paid for by the seller. If you guys look at these $30, $50, $70, $80, $110,000 amounts, especially on larger deals that you guys are paying out of pocket and funding on the deal, it really, really eats into your returns. So the first thing that I'm a huge fan of is just making sure that as much as possible, you're specifically trying to optimize for, as I pull up my screen again here. Number one thing is, I think just optimizing for lower money down deals is the way. There's a lot of value add with basically every $1 or close to it, depending upon, the total entry into the deal, depending upon how much money you're leaving in. The goal is this like 1-to-1 ratio or as close to it, where every, dollar funded, is something like a dollar returned off of your tax bill, right? So the way to do that is lower total entry. So creative financing or loan products that do offer lower down payments. That is obviously going to work much better in 2025 because what it allows you to do is you have more cash left over for the gentleman or the two gentlemen who asked about this is revenue driving amenities. So what I've noticed, so this is a pro and a con. When I started my journey with short-term rentals back in 2021, I was like most of you guys. I had my highest income earning year to date, and I started talking to my CPA and then learning what the amazing and not so amazing reality was of making a lot of money that year. So I was on pace to do anywhere from like 420 to maybe 500,000 with like 4 or 5 months left on the year. And my CPA was starting to math out what was my tax bill going to look like. And that was the first year I was going to have a six-figure tax bill of over 100,000 plus across the federal income tax as well as the state income tax that I lived in at the time. So I was frantically, towards the final 3 or 4 months of the year, trying to do something that was going to offset that. So what I ended up doing that year was I bought around $1.4 million worth of real estate across two deals. One was 580 or 520, 560 in purchase price, and the other one was closer to like 800 something. So those two deals together got me $1.4 million of real estate. And I ran this play, this very first one that you saw, which was I was trying to buy as much real estate as possible for the lowest total entry as possible. The following year, I tried to do the exact same thing. I ended up buying 6 deals in 2022. 3 were on my own and 3 were with partners. The 3 that I bought on my own did not cash flow in the first year. The 3 I did with partners, they did cash flow. And this is the perfect segue into this thing that I'm highlighting here, which is specifically revenue driving amenities. So on these deals that I did with partners, I did find cash between myself and the partner to actually buy and fund the revenue driving enhancements. And for the 3 that I did on my own, I skipped that part. So I literally just took over the properties. They were all existing short-term rentals. I thought just by simply plugging in a better co-host and doing better management, those 3 homes were self-managed. Almost every single one of them was 2 spouses who were in healthcare working like 40, 50, 60 plus hours per week. And I just looked at their reviews and I was like, they're doing a terrible job managing the home. And that's the only missing piece. But in the reality of, learning after being live with them, it wasn't just the management. It was literally adding in revenue driving amenities. So what we found across hundreds of homes that we've helped clients close on since I kind of learned this the hard way for myself in early 22 and mid 2022 was there are categories. So there are exterior revenue driving amenities and there are interior revenue driving amenities. And what's really cool is around 70 to 80% of this is pretty much the same across all markets. Airbnb's product market fit, as I want you to keep in mind, is group travel, and it's specifically luxury. I'm going to double underline this, luxury or premium group travel. So what does this really mean? Well, when you have a competitive advantage in Airbnb, it basically means that you're able to accommodate larger parties with more premium or more luxury feel. And what does premium mean? It just means you have more options to have more cool places, more venues within the home or outside the home to actually hang out together. So the first and second revenue driving amenities that I would highlight most people start with, especially this is what we help clients do. We actually help them find and locate the contractors and the landscaping teams, and we even call for quotes and then coordinate them to go and schedule a visit to the property the day after the clients will show up at the home. So the weekend or 1 week, 2 weeks after you guys close on a home, we are actually coordinating and having these contractors and landscaping teams fly out to meet you, shake hands before they break ground on the projects. The first one, which I think is the easiest one, and this is kind of agnostic of the temperature and the climate that you're in, is a fire pit. And then the number 1 and number 2 one would be a mini putting green. These are probably for 90+% of homes, so long as they have a backyard that allows it and then an HOA that permits this. Fire pits, open flame fire pits, so literally the brick outlay, so the brick stone walkway and the seating area around the fire pit, and then an actual brick stacked circular fire pit with the mortar, keeping it wind resistant. That's going to be your number 1 and number 2 exterior revenue driving amenities outdoors. Some honorable mentions will be things like saunas. If there is data that supports other people who have added in saunas, and you can see when you build out a matrix and you look at the top other performers in that home or in that area, if saunas are actually driving revenues. Hot tubs. This one's pretty obvious. Most people will automatically add those in. It's literally what you're appealing to. Hey, we've got 6 to 8 people who can fit into a 6 to 8 person hot tub. Of course, we want to spend time together. Of course, we want to feature that in our cover photos. Those are going to be some of the top revenue driving amenities. Games in the backyard area. This could be anything like I've seen human sized chessboards. I've seen sand pits for volleyball is a really cool one. Some of the other ones are like oversized chess and other games like that. Oversized chessboard I talked about, oversized Jenga example. You got the idea. Those are going to be the main things that when you take over a home, and the gentleman who asked, what's the additional change in like the delta between what the existing co-host or the existing host who managed the property without those amenities added in, and then what's the difference when we add in those amenities and then add in professional management. Honestly, it's upticks of like $15,000 to $65,000 per year. It's a pretty wide range, but it also depends on the size of the home and the location and how bad the original management was. So the interior, so that was everything for the exterior, and then the interior. It's basically boiling down to two main rooms. The main one is just going to be living room. Because again, if you go back to the thesis, it's group travel, and it's specifically making things feel more luxury and more premium. You just want to basically support those people who are trying to hang out with their friends or their family or their groups of families that are all traveling together. Think, where are logically going to be the rooms where people spend the most time? Well, the number one area, and pretty much we'll just start and end with this because honestly, it's mostly here. It is the living room. So I see things like upgrading sectional sofas. I see things like accent walls. Accent walls are really these cool things that really lean into specifically the premium feel, the luxury and premium feel. And it's basically twofold. I'm just going to call them the vertical 3D panel wood accent walls. And then the second one, if I can drag this over a little bit further, we'll just call them like geometric paint patterns. So for revenue driving amenities, this is like 70 to 80% of the stuff. I'll give you guys some ranges on budgets for what most people budget. I've seen people budget anywhere from 8 to 20, 25,000 for the outdoor revenue driving amenity items, just based on the size of the backyard and to what extent they're making the fire pit significantly more impressive. We have a client who just closed on a home over 2 months ago. She just went live a month ago. She's doing really, really well. Her home is on the Poconos on the water on one of the many lakes out there. I think she was probably the highest spend budget for the outdoor amenities. I think she spent closer to like 30 grand. And she did each of these items. So they have a mini putting green in the backyard. They really decked out the fire pit area. She didn't give me permission to share her listing quite yet, as they're still like tweaking some things. But they did a phenomenal job. The uptick that she's going to have in revenue, it's a little early to say. That home was not live on Airbnb as a short-term rental enough of the year to have a good delta on like, what is the increase going to be? It's going to do over double whatever the revenue it did last year. But the revenue, that's not really an impressive indicator because it wasn't live for like 365 days last year. Typically, we'll establish budgets of like 20 to 40 grand for clients all in. Across the outdoors and so the exterior stuff and then the interior stuff, around like $4,000 to $15,000 of a general contractor for parts and material, and then the labor for them. That also includes some of them installing accent walls, the vertical 3D panel wood walls, and then the geometric paint patterns, which are actually quite simple. We have a design guide that we build out for every client, and then when we call these contractors and when we call the landscaping teams, we literally email or text it over to them and show them what we're looking for, show them examples of what other contractors and landscaping teams have done in other areas for other clients, and say, hey, can you replicate this? Do you have a portfolio? Do you have an example of stuff that you've done like this in the past? And can you do this here? And then what would be the quote amount? Can we lock in a quote? Can you send us an invoice? And then we do installment payments. And then we say, hey, great, I'm going to have you walk the property and visit the client when they're there at the property this upcoming weekend. Can you do Saturday at 8 a.m.? So you guys have time to walk the property, make a decision, and then even start breaking ground with, starting the build outs that day. I'll give you guys, that was a 13-minute monologue according to Fathom. I'll pause right there and ask you guys to take yourself off mute. Can you guys just quickly chime in either via the chat or if you guys just want to take yourself off mute? Any questions or any items that you guys want to dive deeper into for the revenue driving amenity stuff? So iPad, Compa, Larry, Murali, good to see you on here, Murali. Ashish, Avi, just asking you guys to unmute. Any of you guys, going once, going twice, going thrice. Just quickly, any other items for revenue driving stuff and just how to improve cash flow on the homes?
It seems like that would probably be dependent on the market, right? I mean, as far as how much those accent walls and things work well, depending on like where it is. Do you find that it's valuable in every market?
Definitely. I find it is valuable in every market to do revenue driving amenity enhancements. And then also there are markets where certain stuff is indexed much higher, like a higher power law or a higher return on investment, return on time. A great example would be, I think in the Smoky Mountains and the Poconos, the clients who add in the revenue driving amenities in those backyards, I think they see the biggest gains because the avatar of the guests who are traveling out to those areas, they really are looking for group travel and group amenity, the premium luxury feel for that travel. Those amenities do really, really well in there. We started finding more homes in Florida, for example, like Miramar Beach is a great example, and trying to find more homes that have a little more square footage in the backyard, and maybe it's fenced off, maybe it's not fenced off, where we can start adding stuff like this in. We have a couple clients who are going to be the first guinea pigs for this experiment specifically in Miramar Beach. And we have data that supports them adding in literally the fire pit. We just have to ask the HOA if we can do open flames. Otherwise, we're going to do an electric one or a gas fire pit, which I think any of those will eventually be compliant. It's just, which is the best one in the rank order will we ultimately be able to do. So before we have a general contractor or landscaping team break ground on the build, we'll just double confirm with the county, the licensing and permitting department, and the HOA. Just make sure it's good at every single level. Those probably will get pretty significant upticks. Another example of an area where revenue driving amenities don't go as far as other ones. I think if the rest of the market already has a lot of that stuff dialed in, it's less of an uptick versus the areas where there are fewer competitors. A great example of this one is in the Smoky Mountains. You'd be amazed how few people actually have like a basic fire pit outdoors, which to everybody on this call, it's like, well, duh, it's super obvious. Like you're going into one of the most beautiful mountain ranges in the entire US. Everybody loves to look up at the night skies and see the starry skies when they're, there at the property. But most of the hosts out there, like literally 80 to 90% of homes don't have one or both of these assets, the revenue driving amenities. So when you add these in and then you look at the uptick that you get in revenue versus the last 12 months where an existing host was managing the property, the numbers are insane. So I hope that helped clarify why these revenue driving amenities and then the specific markets. Do you get like a higher return in certain markets versus others? So I give you the examples of the Smoky Mountains and the Poconos. So great return for adding these in. I'll give you guys one other option. Anybody else want to quickly take themselves off mute? Going once, going twice. Cool. I'll talk about best markets next. So let me quickly share my screen. Can you guys give me some feedback? Throw an 8 in the chat if that was super valuable. Throw a 9 in the chat if that sucked and you guys would like a completely different approach to this call. So an 8 if you like that, and then a 9 if you didn't like that and have feedback to suggest a better way to do this, just so I can get some feedback. All right. Morali and Avi, thank you guys. I'm waiting for the 9 so I can get somebody to give me insight on how to make this more valuable for you guys. Cool. Larry, what's up with the 9, brother? What do you want to see differently on here? I'm hoping that was a joke. But if you do have legit feedback, please share it. So best markets, I'm going to pull up a sub-market tracker that I've got the team diving into pretty much every single day of every single week. I'm going to give you guys some quick numbers here on best markets. I would say right now, for markets, the stuff that we're finding and where we're finding the best stuff, I would say number one right now is the Smoky Mountains. And then what I'll do is for each market, I'll give you guys like the pros and cons of each one. Oh, Larry thought number 9 was better than 8. Okay. What's really cool about the Smokies is there's just so much inventory. There's so much travel demand for that area. And then really over the last like 6 to 15 months, we had to wait for a lot of that stuff to correct down in terms of purchase price to make it more reasonable to even buy anything out there. So now that a lot of the market has corrected nicely, we're probably seeing more inventory out there than just about any other market. I would say like close to half, if not more than half of the deals every single week that we find are really, really good out there. The next one that I'll just share, and again, some of these are pretty close in order, but some of them are clearly better than others, and I'll highlight which ones are clearly better than others after I finish the list. The Poconos in Pennsylvania. So it's 5 or 6 cities. You attract a lot of local travelers who drive 1 to 5 hours to have weekend getaways. And then during the winter months, you also have a lot of ski resorts out there, or a couple of ski resorts out there. So a lot of people like to hit the slopes, so you have a couple peak seasons. The Poconos is phenomenal. It's 5 or 6 different cities. They're all kind of right next to each other. A lot of them are in proximity to lakes. And then again, the number one and number two things about these markets is, number one, there's a lot of travel demand. And number two, you can actually generate a lot of demand for your rental specifically by adding in the revenue driving amenities. So these two are probably like gold stars of, number one, there's great inventory. Number two, there's great demand. And number three, you can add in revenue driving amenities pretty easily and see a lot of upticks from there. I'm going to give this like hidden market a pretty cool bump here, because recently we started trying to find a lot more out here. Savannah, Georgia. If you guys aren't familiar with Savannah, it's very, very close to the water. There's a specific submarket in this area that's outside of their downtown historic district. There's just a ton of people who travel out there. A lot of super affluent people live in Georgia. Netflix studios actually relocated to somewhere outside of southeastern Georgia, I believe. So there are a lot of super affluent people, a lot of celebrities, a lot of people who like to travel in the area. So they're really looking for the premium stuff. If you buy a home that's like $650,000 to $1.4 million and it has at least 4, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms, depending upon the purchase price, there's a really high ceiling for what you can generate in terms of revenue. And then again, each of these, get we'll call it the green star for every dollar that you throw in for revenue driving amenity enhancements. You do get a pretty good return. Another area, and this one we really, really love as well, it's Dallas. Years ago, they had a bunch of people petition in like the more local downtown area of Dallas that they wanted to outright ban short-term rentals. So even though these homes were zoned for commercial use, meaning you can run them for under 30-day stays, and the local county's department, whether a license or a permit was required to run it as a short-term rental, and the HOA allowed it, there were still citizens and local jurisdiction petitioners who were trying to ban and outright outlaw short-term rental use. And those petitions got signed, and then some local ordinances got installed. And then the short-term rental host just went crazy, and they pushed this to the state Supreme Court. I think it was within like 8 to 15 days. The Supreme Court started to review this case, and they overturned this local jurisdiction ban. And they stated at the state level it was illegal or impossible for any local jurisdiction to similarly outlaw the use of commercial use properties that were zoned for commercial use. So now when we contact the zoning departments and the licensing and permitting departments, if they exist, and the HOAs and the POAs, private owner associations, if they exist, we get tons of stuff outside of the downtown Dallas area that actually works really, really well. So the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area is actually a really, really nice area. And then I would say the Panhandle of Florida also still has this. It's just much harder for us to find the specific stuff that also, and again, this one gets the green star of, hey, it's very obvious and very easy to add in revenue driving amenities out here. I would also say Austin still has this. We sometimes need to wait for some of those homes to come down in value or wait for the sellers to agree to more creative financing. Dallas, we can find stuff every day of the week in the DFW area. Austin, we might need to work the sellers a little bit longer. It's not like we see something go on market and we snatch it, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days after it goes on market. We might need to see that one wait a little while and the seller to become more flexible on adjusting the price or terms for it to make it work. And then the Panhandle of Florida is always going to be really, really good for us. One of the things that I like about the Panhandle is specifically in Santa Rosa Beach, Miramar Beach, we're closing on a lot of either townhomes or single-family homes that do have a backyard, do have the capacity to build out a fence. You can really drive revenue additionally in those areas if you actually have a backyard where you can do these like competitive advantage things. My personal thesis and stuff that's worked really well for me is I used to like over-index and overspend on a really, really nice furniture as one of the first things that I did out of the gate. And then in 2022, that was the year when I started testing for 3 of the homes that weren't performing quite as well. For some of them, we just did our furniture redesign, and for some of them, we did a outdoor amenities add-on, not a redesign because nothing existed. We saw way more returns on adding in the features that were in demand in that area. So I added in hot tubs to all of those homes if they didn't already have them. Most of them already did. But then I started exploring the mini putting green because I saw friends doing it. I added in fire pits. You couldn't do open flame ones. You had to do either electric or gas fire pits. And those all ended up converting really, really well. So what I'll coach clients to do is let's start by adding in the most unique revenue driving amenities first if you're on like a limited budget. And then let's go for the more premium feel on the interior after you knock out, the must-haves. So the must-haves are the tier 1 stuff for our clients now is definitely start with the outdoors. Definitely get those things in there. They're permanent. They're evergreen. Your fire pit, your mini putting green, they will last for years and years and years, and you will get an immediate differentiation lift and a boost from those. And then, if you have the budget, let's then start expanding into things like let's have the general contractor do 3 or 4 accent walls, 1 or 2 in the living room, dining room area, and then maybe 1 per bedroom, and then you'll get a lift. But I think if you start with the exterior first, that will be the biggest lift, followed by the things that you do on the interior to improve there. So that was kind of a blend of best markets or some of the top markets that we really like right now, as well as how the revenue driving amenities kind of factor in there. I know we got to get to the tax stuff and the cost seg stuff. I see it on my list. Quick feedback session here. If you guys want to throw in the chat, and I'm just going to ask everybody to unmute. Throw a 6 in the chat if that made sense. Throw a 7 in the chat if you weren't listening until I said throw 7 in the chat. Throw 6 in the chat if you're actually engaged and paying attention. Throw a 7 in the chat if some of that stuff went over your head. What I'm going to do for the 6s on here is I'm going to give you guys a link to my external calendar. If you guys want to sync one-on-one later today or tomorrow, let's please grab a time. I'll drop this in here a couple times. Let's get some feedback from 1 or 2 people, especially if you were that person who was interested about the markets. So Avi and Avi, I see you guys in here twice. Carlos, Chip, David, Kalpa. Kalpa, I'll get to your stuff next year. I'm just going like in the sequence of what logically makes sense. Can I get one of you guys to take yourself off mute as I drink some milk? I'm a father of 12 days, so I got to keep my milk intake up. This is all natural cow's milk. Cheers. We're doing this for you. We're giving you guys the floor to ask questions in a group setting. So I would appreciate if one of you guys could just chime in. You guys have no questions on markets, no questions on revenue driving amenities. Larry, let's go for it.
No, I was just going to say that it's cool to hear about some of the things that you actually talk about being amenities in one area and also applicable in all the others. Just because we think about it. I'm in Phoenix, right? So you don't think about a fire pit. It's really not top of the list. But I'm guessing that from an amenities perspective,
Phoenix and Scottsdale is one of the markets that actually they have everything. You're in literally one of the most competitive markets in the U.S. And what's nice about Phoenix and Scottsdale for me, none of my clients own anything out there. That is literally the number one market that I go to for exterior and interior design influence. So for example, most of the homes in your market, they do literally everything that you can possibly do in the outdoors. They have the pool. They have the mini putting green. You've seen this. They have the volleyball court. They have the murals on the walls. They have all the outdoor patio furniture. They sometimes build gazebos. They have all the small and oversized games that you can play out there. Some of them have saunas. Some of them even have hot tubs. At night, it actually gets pretty freaking cold out there. So the fire pit where it's appropriate, yeah, it can, right? So the fire pit where it's appropriate, it actually makes a ton of sense. But do you get a lot of returns doing this out there? No, because it's literally one of, if not the most, arguably the most competitive and saturated short-term rental markets. So you might do everything right out there in that area, but still not even cash flow. I've seen people do really well out there, and you certainly can, but I think it's just riskier. Because if you took that exact same approach to doing it somewhere in like the Smokies or the Poconos, 80% of the homes haven't done any of those like 7 or 8 or 9 things. So you'll just get more returns, a higher return on the investment, just because you're in a market where the rest of the gladiators, like they've been eating donuts and smoking cigarettes in anticipation of the event. But everybody in the Poconos, they're like, doing tren and injecting TRT, and they're training with Tim Grover, getting ready for their race or their sprint or their game. But yeah, that's a very interesting market. It's a very competitive one for sure.
Yeah, it's one that I live in more so than what I probably would invest in. I don't know that I want to take on the competition. Plus, I'm
Yep.
like, okay, it's the Pigeon Forge area. We're roller coaster folks, so headed out there for Dollywood.
There you
Savannah,
go.
Georgia sounds like a great place to do because I like the ocean. And so just more of those attracting places for me. Yeah, Phoenix is busy. Scottsdale is popular, but I don't know that that's probably where I would want to go.
We'll look there every year, but it's probably at least another 6 to 12 months. Price, it's both. We need two market corrections to make Phoenix or Scottsdale work. Number one, we need to see a lot of short-term rental hosts delist their properties to make it make sense for us as a team to source a lot of stuff out there. And then number two, we also need prices to come down like crazy. We need the monthly payments to somehow drop because there is kind of an upper ceiling on the revenue that we can hit. And also, like, there are other people who do really well out there. They're investing $250,000 to $350,000 in their $850,000, $950,000 homes to make it work. That's not the game most of our clients want to play. And the reason is, it's just this first item. It's, again, the reverse offset method. The reverse offset method is really just the mechanics of, as I switch back to sharing my screen here, I'll just go back to that slide. The reverse offset method is just purely the mechanics of maximum purchase price for lowest total entry into the deal, and thereby, the highest ratio of 1-to-1 dollars offset, right? So theoretically, if we can buy $1 million home for less than $140,000 all in, like down payment, closing costs, and then post-close enhancements, well, some high income earners who, have a, let's say $750,000 plus income, they're in, the highest of highest tax brackets. And let's say that home happens to be also on the higher end of having higher bonus depreciation, like 350 grand. Well, 38% of 350 grand gets you very close to the total entry that you put into the deal of like 150,000 all in. So the reverse offset method is all about just, again, what's the ratio of purchase price, tax savings, total entry into the deal. That's literally just the offsetting in the tax play. The revenue driving amenity stuff, that's for the cash flow. And then also, another revenue driver is having a better manager on the home. I don't know if I was going to dovetail into something else. I think I said I was going to pull that up for another specific topic, but I got excited and I forgot. So if there was anything, Larry, please guide me. Otherwise, we'll start moving on. Was there anything else that you guys want to get clear on? Murali, I saw that you took yourself off mute as well.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I see most of the locations that you are talking about is in the Southeast. What about like West Coast or Hawaii and stuff like that? Do you guys do anything in those areas kind of stuff? I know with the new, I think there is a new law that got passed in Maui kind of stuff, and that it's going to be certain areas you cannot have STRs, in certain areas you can have STRs. So like I've been talking to some real estate agent there. He's saying like in some areas the price is going to increase drastically because they have restricted STRs in certain areas in Maui because of the fire. They were short of homes and things like that. I'm just trying to understand, like other than Hawaii, like what about the West Coast itself? Like it'll look like you guys don't do much in West Coast. Is that correct?
The reason we don't do much in California or Hawaii, or I guess really the rest of the West Coast, is purely just risk. There's a lot of risk exposure, and it's slightly different reasons for each one of those areas. For example, Hawaii, it's kind of like a blend of every risk available. Like there's acts of God. You literally saw there were fires, there was flooding, there was water, acts of God. And then also it's highly regulated. Also, there's a very transient travel population there and also a transient homeless population there, which a lot of people don't really talk about. I have a client who owns a short-term rental out there. He's literally paying $2,500 a month for an HOA fee, and it more than doubled in the last 18 months for him. So just for those blend of reasons alone, we don't want to support any clients doing deals out there. Clients sometimes ask me to privately underwrite the income projections on a deal just for 15, 30 minutes on a call, but I won't support them, actually purchasing the home through our program. Same thing for California, but for different reasons. California is literally the number one least friendly landlord state in existence. You guys have Gavin Newsom. I think it was like 6 weeks ago, he pitched some crazy, stupid scenario that doesn't really allow landlords to evict tenants based on certain items. And if you kind of extrapolate what that's going to mean for short-term rentals as well, it's like you already made the least landlord-friendly state even less landlord-friendly somehow. In addition to that, there's lots of regulatory and compliance recalibration happening out there. So certain areas, they're getting shut down. Certain areas, there are license or permits getting implemented, and there will be a finite amount, and some people will be grandfathered into their license or permits that they already have. And then new entrants into that short-term rental area, they'll have to either transfer one of those license or permits or apply for a new one, and risk, there might not be enough permits available. So you have to actually speak with that county or that licensing and permitting department before you even go under contract. And then the rest of the West Coast, honestly, it's just like an inventory thing, or there isn't enough income to really substantiate what the monthly payments and the all-in net operating expenses are going to be based on the area that you're in. So that's why we tend to specifically do more throughout like the South. So we'll do a lot in Florida, a lot in Texas, Georgia, you guys saw as well. We do the Gulf Shores in Alabama. We have a super heavy hitting client who's trying to do oceanfront properties that are like 1.5 to 4.5 million in the Gulf Shores, and we're helping him get those. We underwrite them, make offers, and if the sellers are willing to accept, we move. If not, we help him find another one. And then a lot in the Smoky Mountains, a lot in the Poconos, a little bit in Westminster, Colorado, a little bit in Glendale and Mesa, Arizona, and then a few other smaller markets that we don't share too publicly because there's so little inventory, and if something does come on market, we typically try and snatch it for clients. So we keep those smaller markets closer to the chest. But it's literally just about de-risking. We try and not do areas where there's either volatility with like the regulatory governance and the compliance stuff, where it's like the market hasn't settled on a concrete decision that, yes, we allow short-term rentals and we're not going to outright try and re-legislate or ban them or apply these restrictions or limitations. So most of the areas that we buy stuff in, they've already gone through that like regulatory compliance recalibration, so that you don't have to be somebody who's in one of those up and coming markets or like kind of storming and forming markets where the city or the county may or may not eventually just like hate your guts and then make your life a nightmare. Anybody else? Anything else that you guys want to dive into before we get into? I think the next topic was, let me pull this up on my screen. We will go into cost seg stuff. So we've talked about best markets. We've talked about revenue driving amenities. We've talked about why short-term rentals and why now. We've talked about how the revenue driving amenities add revenue and income to the home. And then also another key point on that is people buy small, medium businesses and small, medium-sized businesses all the time. And they really try and improve two things. One is the product and one is the promotion. So if you think about a car wash or a mini putting green, for example, a mini putt course, for example, I used to be in a mastermind where people would literally teach and coach like how they're buying these. They would improve the business itself, and then they would get better marketing. If you look at what you're doing with short-term rentals, you're kind of doing the same thing. You're already buying a short-term rental business that's performing or underperforming, or it's performing really well. And you're going to spend time indexing on those two main things, which is literally the two main things that we've been talking about. It's finding more revenue driving amenities that you add to the property. And then number two, which I'll lean more into if you guys want to talk about this, you find better management or a better co-host. So that is literally the 1-2 punch here. It's just so long as you guys are finding, in the right market, in the best deal type, again, just starting with this thesis, it's like, can we get this? Can we get this like magical 1-to-1 ratio? Can we get a good deal, right? Can we get the most return, most bang for our buck? And then number two, can we max out the returns of the business with improving it, the product? So adding in the revenue driving amenities, knowing that we're appealing towards luxury premium group travel. And then number two, which I didn't discuss here, is the co-host or the management. So just getting better at the promotion, like literally advertising it, and then keeping the ratings high and the occupancy and the average daily rate high. Okay. Revenue and regulations and compliance stuff. I actually just did that one. So we've done best markets, we've done revenue driving amenities, we've done STRs right now, how this, and then I got a lot into the regulations and compliance stuff. Let's free for all. We got another 12 minutes or so. If you guys want to take yourself off mute or just drop a topic in the chat, I'm happy to dive into whatever else is super top of mind for you guys. I'll just unmute everybody and we'll freestyle free for all it for the last 10 minutes. Ashish, Avi, David, Jess, Kampa, Larry, Morali. And Priyanka, good to have you in here. I saw you just hopped in as well. Any specific topics that you guys would like to dive into for the final 8 to 12 minutes? You can also throw it in the chat if you're in an environment where you can't unmute yourself. And then I'm also giving you guys access to my 30-minute calendar link. If you guys are pretty much there where you recognize Why short-term rentals? Why now? If something has shifted recently for you guys that is making short-term rentals a priority, either for the tax benefits or the cash flow or a combination of those two, or just diversifying into a more high return asset class versus your kind of boring stuff, which might be index funds, which might be your IRAs, you're just waiting for your stock to vest at whatever company you're at, and just playing the golden handcuff waiting game. Rest of the call is yours. I think we covered everything. Campana, honestly, you did ask like some of the more nuances of like how you handle certain stuff with guests. I don't really touch those topics, even when I do sync with the co-hosts that a lot of our clients work with. Every other Friday, I will typically sync with like anywhere from like 6 to 12 of the co-hosts that we refer out to clients, or we find and then like introduce if their services are great. I really am not the guy who spends much time in that world, to be honest. If my co-hosts are like talking about that, or if you want an intro to a co-host who has more insight on like how they're dealing with changing policies, things like guest refund policies, things like chargebacks. What's another one that's been a topic on calls? Seeing how launching services is or isn't impacting a listing ranking higher in like their search and impressions score, which is pretty interesting because we look at Airbnb insights for that one. I probably wouldn't be the guy to talk about that since I don't spend 40, 50 plus hours a week managing the homes. I do the fundamentals to make it easier for the people who manage the homes to actually manage them. Morali said, which of those initial investments, down payments, amenities, improvements, furniture, your fees are tax deductible? So the answer is all of them, but in slightly different ways. When you take an asset, so let's say you have $1 million home and there ends up being $350,000 in depreciation that's associated with it. Whether you put $1 million for the total purchase into the homes, like the $1 million down payment was the down payment, or you put $50,000 as the down payment, the offset is still the same. So the asset purchase itself, it doesn't matter if you guys put in $500,000 or $5,000 to purchase the home. The bonus depreciation associated with the asset itself is independent of the down payment and the closing costs associated. The things that happen after that, like amenities improvements, the furniture fee for like paying our company, for example, yeah, those are pretty much active business expenses. So you would be able to offset and write those off. But again, the down payment, it's not like you get to triple dip or double dip. So for example, if you get $350K in bonus depreciation and you put $180K all into the deal for cash to close, the 180 it's irrelevant. Whether it was 5,000, whether it was $1 million all in, you still get the same amount of bonus depreciation. Larry, how much of an investment is needed typically to offset an income of $400K, for example, with a cost seg, assuming W-2 income? Typically like 1.1 to 1.5 million as a purchase price across one or two homes is typically the range. And that's just reverse engineering out. The typical range for bonus depreciation is around 25 to 35% of the total purchase price of the home. So the $1 million home example, let's say the land is around 200,000. So there's 800K of assessed value for everything that isn't the land. That home will be around 35 to 55% of that 800K value will be accelerated into year one. And that might be a little bit on the high end, maybe like 30 to 45, 50%. It just depends. It maths out typically to a range of around 25 to 35% of the total purchase price. For either end of that spectrum, it's just, was the land super, super high in value, or was the land relatively lower in value? Because the land value is not something that you can depreciate against. Where are the best cash flowing markets right now? Do your clients move from STR to MTR/LTR in off seasons? Jess, really good question. I shared the best markets. I'll pull that up on my screen here in just a moment. Do clients move from STR to MTR or long-term rentals? Honestly, no. In the off seasons or in the slower seasons, we had clients who would kind of play the game of like shifting to medium-term rentals. Years ago, there were platforms like Furnish Finder where this was actually a reasonable solution. In 2026, we'll actually see probably more people entertaining the idea of rotating into pad split for 60, 90, 120 day scenarios. Maybe they do that, right after December comes along and they open up their like January through May for a pad split. It's going to be kind of tricky because you need to kick everybody out for May 30th and then open it up as a short-term rental for pretty much your peak summer seasons, depending upon the area, like June, July, August, and then maybe rotating back. But I haven't really seen anybody do that successfully. I'm sure there are people, but definitely not my clients. I think the thing that they really index on is you don't really have these like peak slow seasons when you have one of the 90th or 95th percentile performers in a submarket, because you differentiated on the things we talked about earlier in this call, specifically the revenue driving amenities, and then having a really good property manager or co-host who knows how to promote it regardless of the peak season or the off season that you happen to be in. And then the question on those specific markets, let me quickly pull this up here. I think you might have joined late since we did talk quite a bit at length on the markets. And then guys, give me one or two more questions in here and just be prepared to take yourself off mute. For Jess, just a really quick recap. I would say the top performing short-term rental markets in 2025, 2026 and beyond are going to be a blend of these 5 or 6, so long as you actually add in the revenue driving amenities and have really, really good management for these specific areas. Let me just make sure that I'm pulling this up so you guys can see. Oh, there you go. There's my pregnant spouse as we rotate through. There we go here. Okay. Now you guys can see it. She's no longer a pregnant spouse. We had our baby healthily almost 2 weeks ago. The top markets, let's go into here. So number one, I'm just going to say the Smoky Mountains. This is just a blend of there's so much inventory available. And also, so long as you have the terrain around the home to really add in those revenue driving amenities, it becomes quite easy to know with great certainty. There are a lot of other 5-6 bedroom homes that are performing really well in this submarket. You have the opportunity to add in the revenue driving amenities, and you can do it in under 1 to 2 weeks after you close and then get the property live. Just tons of demand in the area, tons of opportunity to actually, compete with the gladiators in the arena and be one of the 95th percentile guests or hosts rather in that area. Same thing with the Poconos, tons of travel demand. 80% of the homes really don't have too much in terms of like unique revenue driving amenities. So there's competition, but there's not good competition, if that makes sense. Like there are a lot of people playing soccer, but not really any of them went to like all-star academies or AAU teams or had like professional training throughout their youth. So, it's a heavy market with a lot of people competing, but not a lot of good competitors, if that makes sense. Savannah, Georgia is also quite nice just because, again, tons of travel demand. There's some really nice homes out there, and you can also you can go pretty high into the purchase price out there. Like we find 1.2, 1.5, 1.8 million dollar homes for relatively low entries. And again, they get the green star on each of these if they're a market where you can add in the revenue driving amenities in the backyard. Same thing with Dallas and Austin. Dallas I spoke at length about on this call just because there's so much inventory out there. Austin, we need to work these sellers for 30, 60 plus days. Typically, we'll see a deal go on market and we know we're going to have to wait for it to not sell at the price and terms that they're looking for right now so that it actually cash flows on the price and terms that we need it to. And then the Panhandle in Florida, for people who really want something oceanfront or oceanside, the name of the game out here is just making sure that you buy something that clearly has a backyard or some other area on the exterior where you can actually add in the revenue driving amenities. And if we can't, then we just need to spend more time doing the interior revenue driving amenities, which I kind of broke out here. There's interior and then there's exterior stuff. And what I just personally the game I like to play, and I think clients kind of align with this too, really just starting with the exterior stuff. I have seen that most people get a bigger lift from doing that stuff first versus the people who do the interior stuff first and then, add in the exterior or do the exterior stuff and then revamp the interior. I think your biggest lifts are always just going to come from the exterior first. So Jess, I hope that helped. Larry, how long after going live does it take to be in the top 5% of listings? Probably 12 to 18 months on average. In the first year, most clients will get into 50 to 75th percentile, which is actually pretty impressive. What most homes need to do to break even is get into, for most markets, it's 40th to 60th percentile, which is what we kind of gauge as a worst case scenario. Because obviously the worst case scenario is you're losing money. Good blanket for protection is just making sure that 40th to 60th percentile gets you breaking even. You don't want to see something you need to get to the 70th percentile just to break even on a home. That's a pretty aggressive leap. We have done that for clients in certain areas, but you want to see that, even in an off season or an off year, you're still breaking even or positive cash flowing. In the top 5% of listings, the 95th percentile is a pretty elite group. 80th to 90th percentile, you can definitely get there in a year. You can have people who you only really see the data after you are live for a year. So the answer is for any of these, you have to be live for a year. But in terms of hitting like the income projections in the first calendar year, that gets you into the 90th. That's actually a really interesting stat. I'd have to sit down. I can't honestly say that I know that off the top of my head. I'd have to know what the 90th percentile is in every single market. But pretty much all of our clients hit their numbers if they actually do the design stuff, which is, again, that's the big thing. It's just like start with the exterior, do the right things, and then graduate from there. Ashish talked about, you talked about year one offset. How does it work year two and onwards? On your cost segregation study, year one is going to be the big nut that you get of offset, and obviously the first year. Years 2 through 5 are also pretty impressive. I have to look at a cost seg to just see the exact range, but I've gotten a few that are close to $1 million in purchase price, a few $100,000 in the first year, and then I've seen like $15,000 to $45,000 kind of in descending order in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. Don't quote me on that. As a percentage range, it's small, but it's significant. It's big enough to not be in. Like for example, one of the homes that I closed on last year, I think in year 2 was like a $50,000 offset. And then year 3 was 40, 45. Year 3 was scheduled at something like 39,000. And then the following year was scheduled at like 34. Each of those are like $10,000 to $20,000 a year in savings for me, net effective tax savings. So there's still some significant stuff years 2 through 5, and then years 6 through 39, because these are commercial assets and they're scheduled over a 39-year amortization for commercial real estate. It's 27 and a half years for residential stuff. If you guys have ever bought long-term rentals and ran them as long-term rentals, years 6 through 39, it's almost literally nothing. So heavily indexed to year 1, and then the rest of that kind of aggregated towards years like 2 through 5, and then years 6 through 39, almost nothing. Jess said, thanks. Thank you, Jess, for the insightful question. She said, for these investments, you recommend targeting properties that are currently STR already or convert one that isn't. Honestly, I'd recommend this strategy because I like working with people like me. We're high income earners. We're making a lot of money, but we're also losing a lot of money every single year to tax. And I think we want to save more on our tax bill for the purpose of not needing to work harder and longer every single day and every single week and every single month and every single year, but rather keeping more of our hard-earned money, investing it more wisely, and accelerating the rate at which we get to retire one spouse or both of us earlier. So the reason I like pre-furnished short-term rentals is because there's less legwork and less guesswork on designing and theming out the home. And then also we get to spend more time with our kids. Like most people work 40 to 50 hours a week. They're not trying to, take on a 50-hour per month design project for the first 2 months that they might be live and then wait for the property to go live. You guys are already super strapped for time. I think there's just a good balance and a blend. And this is kind of like the convergence or the confluence of like everything that most of my audience wants. You can obviously make it work for unfurnished homes. Probably 1 out of every 15 or 20 clients do end up doing homes that are not furnished. So they have to engage, either their spouse might be a designer or they pay a local designer to go and fully furnish the home. And I've certainly done that. I did that as recently as a year and a half ago, because most of the stuff I buy is already performing short-term rental. I'm just trying to come in and buy existing businesses and like make them better. That's my lens of how I view doing short-term rentals. I'm just trying to find stuff that I know, man, this should be performing better just by number 1, adding in a better co-host, but number 2, really like just adding in like $25,000 to $35,000 worth of amenities, and then restaging everything, retaking the photos, and then adding in the enhanced co-host or property management team. Then they'll really get this thing to perform closer to like some of these homes that I'm looking at in the 70th or 75th percentile, because I now have a better home, better amenities, better staging, and better photos. I might not be able to hit their numbers in the first year because they've also got 45, 5-star reviews. They have like a 4.9 star rating, but my home is clearly better. So on some weekends when people are debating, hey, which one do I do? Do I do this home that's the super host, or I do Nick's spot that's managed by Georgianne that has very few 5-star reviews, but like they got everything dialed in here. They only got 4 reviews, but they're all saying pretty good things. I think I'm going to take the risk and do this one. Give me that competition all day. That's the type of stuff that I want to be competing with. So that's how I design and theme the homes. And then how I orient like what type of home, and furnished or not furnished, what am I trying to buy? Larry says he loves that answer. Dude, pay me money so we can work together. I'd rather have you fund me than your inefficient government. And I'd rather have you fund me than an inefficient lender who charges $15,000 to $45,000 loan origination fees for whatever you might do otherwise. Let me save you $60,000 to $180,000 on your down payment and closing costs. Let's stop tiptoeing around it, man. Let's work together. Let's do it. What else? I'll let me see how I'm on time. We're a few minutes over the hours. Can anybody just tell me how did you guys like this call? Was there anything that was valuable, not valuable? We'll wind it down and wrap it up. Do you guys like this? Would it be useful if I do one of these every week or so until you guys decide to work with us? I'm very happy to give you guys my time. I hope there was a good return on you guys giving us your time or me your time today. Can I get some feedback from you guys really quickly? Just what did you like? What would make these group calls even better? Are there other assets you guys want us to put together? Any other resources? Just let me know. I live off of your guys' feedback, so please give it to me now before we wrap it up. Ashish, David, Kampa, Larry exclaimed, I love that answer. So that was one feedback. Ashish, go for it.
No, I think this is wonderful. This is my first. I joined. I like it. Yeah, I think good questions. I think. Thanks for all the answers.
Guys, Ashish was referred by Peter Eck, right, Ashish? Oh, I put himself back on mute. Unless you are another Ashish, I can't. I only see your first name. Are you the one and only Ashish that was referred by Peter? Yeah, dude, you should get started with us. We are very ready to help you out. I'm excited. Larry, same thing to you. He wasn't referred by Peter, but you should get started with us. David, Kampa, Murali, Priyanka, going once, going twice. I'll give you guys the floor for another minute or two. If there is a topic, if there is a question that you guys have, please ask it now. I have the time. I'm here for you guys. You guys want to look at anything else? You want to look at a deal? You want to see any other example of something? Tell me what's top of mind.
If you have an example that you can share, I think that will help. Something that recently.
Yeah.
Closed or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So we closed on this one for a client last week. So let's quickly review this one here. So I'll pull this one up. There's a gotta run, but thank you, sir. And then guys, final pitch on this. I dropped the link to my calendar in the chat. If we haven't spoken recently, let's definitely get on a call. So this is an example deal that we just closed on for a client. And what I'll do here is maybe in real time I can get lucky and just pull up everything for the underwriting on this one. Give me like a minute here just to put these two items side by side so you can kind of see this in real time. And then guys, while I'm pulling this up, would you guys do me the honors and chime in with any other questions, any other feedback? I'll pull this one up for Ashish. I think you guys would really like seeing this as well. Okay, AirDNA is conking out on me, so I might just manually do this one really quickly for you guys. Actually, it looks like their servers are literally so slow right now. I and the team have been literally just going into incognito windows and doing this. If this is useful for the rest of you guys who are still on here, I'll stay on. My other call isn't going to show up, so that's perfectly fine. This is an inspection review with another client. It actually looks like they got it done with Joe on the team, and everything was good. Let's go. We got a deal that we will close on here, which is great. Priyanka, if you want to take yourself off mute, what I'm doing right now is Ashish was just asking, can we review a recent deal that closed or a recent deal that went live for a client? It's going to take me like 2 minutes just to pull up the AirDNA underwriting stuff, so you guys don't have to sit and watch me do that. Is there anything that you wanted to cover really quickly? I can do two things at once. I do real estate, so I can do many things at once.
Yeah, no, I joined a little late, but you might have covered it. Just wanted to check, how do you help with cutting down on down payments or closing costs? Not sure if you covered it already.
Mm-hmm. What is the specific question about closing costs?
No, I just saw in your email agenda that this was one of the agenda items. So is there, how do you do that? Cutting down on down payments, etc. Is there?
How do we reduce down payments and closing costs? Specifically through number one, the really easy one is if you guys are doing a conventional deal, one of the underrated things that you should negotiate is a massive seller credit with the seller. So psychologically, what most sellers, and the listing agents know this, what most sellers are married to is a very specific purchase price. Everybody's married to a very specific number about what their home is worth. And every time they need to drop the purchase price or they get lowballed on offers, they get very upset. So what we'll always tell people is we are very happy to give you the asking price that you are looking for. Obviously, this home is going to be subject to an appraisal. This is for conventional loan product, like homes that you've probably closed on. Obviously, we know the home is going to be subject to appraisal, so we need to get the appraisal. We're not going to pay over the appraised value. So if the appraisal comes back and indicates that it's worth less than this, we're coming down. But what we really need is, we'll give you fair market value for your home. We're not going to lowball you. But what we need is a $35,000, $25,000, or $15,000 seller credit, because what we're going to do once we close on this home is we need to actually have the budget to put in the funds to enhance and improve the property post-close. And, with the amount that we're putting down and then these closing costs, it's really going to eat into our budget. This is the only way that we can make the deal work. So Brian on my team, who reaches out to the sellers, has that conversation with either the seller or the listing agent or both of them. And they'll be very, very willing to accept an offer like that because it feels like they're winning on the purchase price, but in reality, they're still giving us money back at close. And that's what a seller credit is. So that's one way of reducing closing costs for conventional deals. Another way of reducing closing costs, and this is how we typically help save clients $60,000 to $180,000 across their down payment and closing costs on deals, is negotiating creative financing. So subject to financing is an example of people who bought their homes recently with low money down payments. They have low equity in the deal or low equity in that home that they own, and they have very low interest rates, especially if the home was purchased in 2020, 21, or 2022. So we'll give them a fair market value or maybe even slightly over fair market value offer price of their home in exchange for a very low down payment. I'm talking as low as 4.5% to 12.5%, 13% down, plus very low closing costs because there's no new lender involved, because we're just taking over the responsibilities of making the payments on their existing debt, which has really, really low interest rates and therefore really low monthly payments. Probably the ultimate best, if you could think of a blend of all the benefits that you get, that is probably the most ideal scenario for creative financing. So low down payment, crazy low down payment, very low, almost non-existent closing costs, and then super low or lower interest rates and therefore lower monthly payments. So you get the reverse offset method where you're buying a property for a high purchase price or a purchase price that it's worth or close to what it's worth, low total entry into the deal, and then it's 1-to-1 ratio of the net effective tax savings so that you have the funds left over to deploy into revenue driving enhancements post-close. Another example of creative finance that really helps us drive down the down payment and the closing costs, again, to save clients on average $60,000 to $180,000 across the down payment and closing costs, is some element of seller financing. These are typically homes that are owned by sellers for more than 5, 10, 15 plus years, and they have higher equity positions in the home. So probably more than 30 to 40% equity position. So $1 million home, for example, that they have a $350,000 equity position in. Well, we would say to them, hey, we're not going to put 35% or $350,000 out of $1 million down on this home today. What we would happily do is we'll put 120, 150, 12 to 15% down, and then seller finance that remainder 200, 230,000 over a 30-year period, and then maybe a 10 or 7 or a 5-year balloon. So this way, again, we might buy it at fair market value or slightly higher than fair market value. That's the one give and take trade-off that we might need to give to the seller in order to make the deal work. But we win massively on the down payment, the crazy low closing costs, and then typically much lower monthly payments, which help us cash flow and stay cash flowing for a very long period of time. That's another example of how we use creative finance to help reduce the down payment and the closing costs. So you have a higher internal rate of return, higher cash on cash return, and just more cash flow after you go live with the property. Did that make sense? Was there anything in particular you wanted to dive into on the mechanics of how we do that? Oh, I see you just muted yourself. Go ahead. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. All right. I told Ashish that we would get this review done. So let me quickly pull this up here. 18424 is the zip code. Let me see if I can get this pulled up here, and then we'll try and fly through it. Okay. Yeah, so let me just get the map built out. So we are right around Big Bass Lake. Okay, here we go. So what I can do is I can just quickly draw right around this. Okay. All right, so what I'll do is this. I'll just pull some of the examples. So this property that we just closed on for the client, that's definitely not my first custom field. Okay, this one that we closed on for the client. So now I can put these side by side. So let's do a quick underwrite. So here's an example home that we just closed on for a client. It's right on Big Bass Lake. So as you'll see here, I drew out a buy box. So right now I might zoom in a little bit. We've got that buy box drawn out right around this home. This home is I think this is 5 bedrooms. Let me double confirm. It might be 4. This is a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home. So I'm going to quickly just pull up the Zillow listing, take a quick dive into this one here. Okay, and it should say closed. Boom, shakalaka. Just closed on that last week. Let's go. All right, so we got a 4-bedroom home here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an apples to apples comparison. Let's take a look at all the other 4 bedrooms over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up those listings. Make sure I'm looking at all 4-bedroom homes. We'll include the ones, just any number of guests. Most of them are going to say at least 8. Literally any bathroom count. Won't care about that on the first underwrite here. And then what I'll also do is I'll try and filter out data that isn't really useful, which is data from homes that really aren't available that much on the year. I want to see, other homes that are actually performing all year round or literally listed as short-term rentals all year round. So you'll see this one over the last 365 days. It was available almost every single day, or literally every single day, almost every single day. So I want to look at those types of examples. Now what I'll probably do is let me get rid of, I'm just going to chop this down a little bit. I'm going to try and just do the homes that are a little bit closer to the water because I think this one for Ravi is just a few blocks away. There we go. Okay. So what I've got here, and I'm just going to quickly show you guys, there are 9 listings in this area. The lowest performing one did around $20,000 in revenue in the last 12 months. The middle of the pack, which is listings number 4 and 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they were doing around $45,000 to $52,000. This home specifically is going to have right around $68,000 in total expenses annually. So what we want to make sure is, as we projected this one to do closer to like 80,000, we want to make sure that we have all the chops to compete with the homes that are doing closer to 80K plus. And I think when we went through everything, this was probably one of the examples that I thought was the most apt comparison. And what we'll do is we'll try and identify stuff that they already have that's working really well. So as you can see here, they have a fire pit. This photo kind of sucks. It is taken during a good time of day, which is during the night, the evening. They are missing some like string lights, some balcony canopy lights out here, which definitely make things pop. This is a pretty bad photo of the hot tub. This is just a static like, hey, this is a hot tub, not a, hey, this is a photo of what the experience is going to be like. So they're missing the angling of this. So they should have photos here with, or they should have position here like wine glasses, maybe a charcuterie board, maybe having a couple towels in the background, a couple bathrobes in the background. Because again, what we're trying to do is you're trying to create the vibes of a luxury or premium experience. Everything is experience-based. So this just literally shows a photo of a hot tub. Better listing photos show, hey, this is what the experience is going to look like. A better experience-based approach to this photo would be, staging the dining room table. Maybe they actually have one like that, and showcasing what it's going to look like when you're there and when you're enjoying the space with your friends. So they have a cool living room. This is literally a terrible photo. Like this is also why the home is probably losing out on maybe 10 to 20 grand per year with probably like $15,000 worth of really simple improvements. And then also some restaging and re-photo taking. They actually have a really nice living room, and they actually did stage this one quite well. This is a good photo. But I think one of the things this listing under-indexed on, and this is one of the things that we highlighted when we were looking at and reviewing deals in this area, is they're missing some of the other revenue-driving amenities in the backyard. They have this massive backyard. They're really underutilizing it. And the name of the game here is they did a really good job with the interior. This is stuff that I think we would add in for my client's home later on. We would start with the main revenue-driving enhancement stuff, which is going to be all the outdoor stuff, because it's the easiest to compete on. And the reason it's the easiest to compete on is because almost nobody else does it. So what's interesting, this home actually has a nicer interior than my client's home. So they have nicer living room, they have nicer basement. The way their game room is oriented right now is a little more impressive. This living room is cool. It's theirs is a little more spacious. They have the half A-frame, I think it was. They have a little nicer living room and kitchen as well. They have slightly nicer furniture in some of the areas. But what we're going to do is we're really just going to lean into, we got to do stuff to improve the backyard and just make it more appealing, make it more premium luxury feel. And this is the name of the game. If I were somebody who were looking at this for the first time, I'd be like, man, I don't really know about this home. For somebody like me, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, I think this is a $400,000 home that we can get to eventually perform at $80,000 to $110,000 a year because of what the comps do that have nailed the backyard stuff. So for example, they went literally the cheapest route. So they bought like $150 above ground portable fire pit, and then these really cheap, like 50 to 75 metal, like wireframe chairs, which aren't very comfortable. What my client is going to do is he's actually going to pay a landscaping team to professionally come in and install a true underground and slightly above ground fire pit. So that's going to be the first revenue driving amenity. We're also going to add in the mini putting green. And if I were to go a little bit deeper on here and zoom out on the buy box, we would find other examples of homes that have added those items in, don't have any intangibles that this home doesn't have, meaning we can't compete with those things. So the other homes don't have those things that we can't compete on. And then we would recognize, yeah, this home in the first year is probably going to do anywhere from $75,000 to $95,000, just depending upon how they nail the amenities and then how the co-host actually manages it. So I shared with my client, I think we're probably going to have to budget anywhere from like $12,000 to $24,000 just for the backyard enhancements, starting with the fire pit and then the mini putting green, and then exploring, do we want to add in a small sauna? Do we want to add in a mega barrel sauna? And then seeing if there's anything else based on the terrain and what the landscaping team thinks that we can do out there. Just start with that and then have this super impressive and hopefully the most impressive backyard in that entire area. And then all those people who are traveling with guests of 8, 10, 12, maybe even 14 people, they're going to start choosing this one over some of those other areas, not because the home has a more impressive kitchen or a living room, but because the team who's booking it or the group of guests, they know that they're going to have more fun and a better experience booking this one, which is more catered and suited to what they're going to do while they're at the property, which is definitely going to be outdoors and chilling for 9 to 10 months out of that year. And then maybe even people will go out there and use it during the colder months if there isn't snow on the ground or ice on the ground, specifically the fire pit, because it's gorgeous and people love using that stuff. It's a proven amenity. So that's an example of a deal breakdown. And that one I'm super excited about because he's going to add in a lot of enhancements to that home. I think it's going to do quite well. So I am really, really excited. I want to see that one get live in the next like month or so, which we should be able to. Guys, I am running out of juice, and I hope you guys really appreciate this. Ashish, was that good? Did you want to dive into anything else?
No, I think that's good. I'll try to book a 30-minute with you and see if we can have some questions, but I don't want to take everybody's time for that. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll drop my link one final time. Guys, hit my link. We are rapidly approaching the end of the year. If you guys are really trying to buy something in the next 1 to 2 months, the time to start moving is now. Now. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Cool, guys. I'll drop it in the chat one more time. Appreciate you guys. I'll send this recording to you guys tomorrow or the day after, whenever my assistant trims it down and gets it live on YouTube. Cool. Good talking to you, Ashish. I texted you the link as well. So I'll see you on my 30-minute calendar. And then David Campana, good to sync with you guys as well. Talk to you guys soon. See you.